You're watching a very special episode of A Conversation of Candy. This episode is awesome because Kelsey and myself get to speak with Rick Perry, the master of minis, the creative producer behind those wonderful battle sets in every season of Dimension 20. He was kind enough to spend some time talking with us and answering our questions, and so without further ado, here's our Rick Perry interview.
First, I just want to ask, how have you been keeping yourself busy in quarantine? I believe it's been said that you're working on future seasons of Dimension 20, but are there any other current or recent projects you've been working on you could talk about?
Sure, yeah. I am working on some other D20 related stuff that I cannot talk about, but yeah, we've been doing a lot of gardening. Actually, and a lot of just stuff around the house. We have 2 small children, which keep us pretty busy. Yeah, I actually, I don't know if you guys can see behind me, but my wife just made kimchi last night with 30 pounds of Napa cabbage that we grew in the garden. I'm super proud of that. And I really like kimchi, so I'm super stoked for that to be ready to eat.
Oh, that's awesome.
How about y'all? How's it been for you guys?
It goes in waves. I've just been trying to find projects and stuff. There's a week or so where I did a little gardening. I have one little tiny piece, chunk of chives and 1 garlic that sprouted.
Nice.
That survived me. There's a lot that didn't make it.
Yeah.
And then I'm a house cat of a human being, so I transitioned to this quite well. I guess I've been playing a lot of D&D. I've just been playing a ridiculous amount of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's really what it amounts to.
Yeah, I've definitely been playing more role-playing games, more D&D, and some other games too. That's been a good silver lining for sure.
That segues into a question that I had. So what is your history with tabletop gaming? Because we all know you can lay it down on some miniatures, but what's your history? What's your vibe in the tabletop world?
Well, as a kid, growing up in rural Texas, I think I definitely remember some point where I was maybe at the mall or something in Austin, and I saw D&D in the bookstore or whatever, and I was forbidden from playing Dungeons and Dragons because not that my parents were particularly religious. They just were kind of a little fearful or whatever, but they're that's the devil's game, you're not allowed to play that. Same thing
in my childhood.
Really?
Satanic Panic was strong in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah. But at some point we did get the Marvel Superheroes box set, which is I just remember really being into that. I played it with my brother. Probably wasn't playing it correctly, but we just really enjoyed that. And then in undergrad, I got to play in this super epic 2nd edition campaign, where it was 10 people and we played up all night, and we were playing the descendants of previous campaigns in this original world that the DM had created. It was so rich, and no miniatures in that. It was all theater of the mind.
Yep.
But that just sold me. I was this is the greatest thing ever. It's so cool. So I did that a lot. And then after college, I sort of fell out of it for a while. I just, was doing other things. And I guess a lot of my friends weren't really playing tabletop role-playing games. So I would still buy the books and, read them and just enjoy it myself. But wasn't until recently, it was almost over 10 years later that I guess, with 5e coming back, I don't know, it just was on my radar, and I was seeking out actual play recordings before there were even podcasts of them. I just remember trying to look on the internet, where can I watch people? I just was thirsty to play D&D for some reason, and so I got back into it, and 5e is so great and easy to learn in that way, and And that was like maybe a year or just under a year before I first met with College Humor about D20. So it was like perfect timing, and I had just started running my own campaign, and yeah, so it just kind of worked out really well.
Yes.
That
is one of the things that I love about 5e is lots of people I know have had gaps of not playing for a few years or decade even, and then 5e made it so easy to just kind of get back into things without as much crunch unless you want to get there eventually.
Totally, yeah.
All right, Kelsey.
All right.
First prepared question. Kelsey's got the prepared questions from us, and then I've got the ones from Facebook, and I think a couple from Discord from people in Dimension 20 fan groups. So we'll be switching off. Yeah. So on episode 12 of Adventuring Party, you talked about how you got into production and into Dimension 20. You mentioned you had an arts background. Was production on film things, was this always kind of roughly where you wanted to end up?
Not really, not at all. I always was kind of into visual arts and could draw and stuff. And I went to college at the University of North Texas, and I studied painting and drawing, and made big oil paintings and kind of conceptual performance art and stuff. And I really enjoyed it, and I kind of had a knack for it. But I didn't really want to go to grad school for studio art, and I just kind of wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I moved to New York City because some buddies of mine had moved there, and I just was trying different things. I lived in Mexico for a minute, and I was living in New York though, and I was selling Mac computers at a CompUSA, and it wasn't very much fun for me. And I heard there was this thing you could be called a production assistant in TV and film, and I didn't really know what it was, but I was like, that sounds cool. I want to try that. And so I just like hustled and kind of got into production, and then my eyes really opened, and I loved it. And I really quickly gravitated towards the art department stuff, because I also have like a background in construction and stuff. And I don't know, the thing that really like immediately drew me in was production work is like this collaborative, creative, kind of like clandestine project, where like you're all working on this thing really intensely for the love of creating something beautiful and cool. And if you're not even like in that moment, or you don't really know about production, it's just this, it doesn't even make sense what's happening, or it's hard to really even access it in a way. And I just liked all that. I just like, this is so cool. All these people are just hustling to make something together, and this is for me. And so from then on, I've just kind of been doing different things in the art department and stuck with production.
Nice. No, that is interesting what you say there, because there's so much about production that is this black box to viewers of all kinds of things that just, it's a mystery but suddenly these amazing things appear.
Totally.
Yeah, mentioning your set design work and stuff, what's the favorite set piece or thing that you've built in your like work prior to Dimension 20?
Prior to Dimension 20, I don't know. I went to grad school at UCLA for film directing, and so I made a number of short films that I'm proud of. I think were cool, but just within the realm of like designing sets, production design stuff, I don't know. I worked on a short for one of my friends at UCLA where we designed and built the inside of this like Manhattan apartment, and for the short film, and there was it was set during a hurricane in New York City, and so we had to do these rain effects, and we had a big translight, so when you looked out the window, it actually looked like Manhattan, and it was just this really elaborate kind of really ambitious small project, and I think the film turned out really good, and just was really proud of working on my friend's project, and being able to have my hand in so many of the details of it. I really like stuff like that. That's for me personally, I like a lot of design and build kind of things where it's not just doing the design and handing it off, where I'm actually there the whole process and touching things and working things out. A lot of times I leave some of the design to be worked out in the process, once I get to touch the materials and I just trust that it's going to work out and yeah, so that's just kind of my preferred process, and this is a great project for that kind of vibe.
That sounds fantastic. I actually have a question from one of the people on, I want to say Dimension 20 Dice posting. Aaron, that kind of leads off of that. Aaron Dana asks, have you ever had to cope with last minute changes or based on unexpected choices that the PCs have made? Because we all know that you build these sets and everything in advance, and Brennan seems pretty good about corralling his party, but has there ever been anything, whether it's PC driven or just in general, where maybe they're in the shoot and you have to get something done or something has to shift suddenly because the story changed a lot?
Sure, yeah. I mean, some for sure, but not too much, I mean, Brennan is really masterful, at being a DM in so many ways, but particularly in that way, I think he's just so fluent in improv and dungeon mastering that he's able to, I watch him and try and wonder what's going on in his head sometimes, because I just think the world of him, and but I will be sitting on the sidelines and I'm looking at my watch while they're taping. I'm like, okay, I know this episode's going to be over in 7 minutes or something. It's time for this to end, and they're supposed to be at this other part of the world having this battle because the set's right here. I can see the set. I know what I have to bring out in 10 minutes, and it's I have no idea how he's going to get them back there, and somehow he always does, and it's so seamless and not only, it's not even a flaw. It's a thing that actually adds to the story. Finds this incredible way to weave it together. So thankfully that makes my job a lot easier. But we definitely have had things we had to turn around really quickly, like famously when Fabian got the hangman motorcycle, that was oh, now we need a hangman miniature. Can we get one of those? And it's yeah, but we also need one with him on the bike and one with him off the bike. Okay, yeah, we can get, so stuff like that pops up, but it's too, I think it would be too, I guess it's possible. Anything is possible because the stuff is not scripted, but I think, the players kind of also understand the way things work and it's a big collaborative effort too, but yeah, I don't know. I guess something could happen where we would just be oh, well, we really have to just stop and go do this other thing because, and we need some time to build something. But usually it's just a small thing, and we can just be all right, I get on the phone and call somebody, go to the hobby store, get this Reaper miniature, take it to the paint shop, and we just get it done quickly, so.
Yeah, mentioning the hangman actually goes very nicely to my next question, which is kind of around ships and vehicles. I think the hangman's probably the vehicle that gets the most airtime, but there's so many cool vehicles and ships throughout the seasons, from the Bloodkeep airships, that little Goblin dirigible, especially those Dairy Island boats. What's your favorite vehicle or ship that you've built, and why?
Training the tiny heist cars, the the boats, the airships. Is there anything else over the bikes?
Helicopters at the end of
Oh yeah. I don't know. That's a tough one. Probably, I would say probably the airship, just because I don't know. It's just really cool. It's just a really cool. It was a really gratifying build, because when I saw that kit that we based it off of, it's like you already want to just make it into like a really cool like Herodrum pirate ship type thing, and that was what we had to do, except we had to make it fly. So it was like, this is cool. It was a good one.
No, I like the setup of that too, having the lower deck as just like off to the side so you can still see everything going on. It was a great one.
Well, so that's an example of something that happened after the fact, like we were I think we were coming into that battle, and we didn't have that built because that was a discussion beforehand, and we're always kind of making these decisions. Do we need to build that? Because you can't build everything, and it was like, no, it'd be fine. And then it was like, sure enough, can we just make a little deck thing? Yeah, sure, we can do that real quick.
Nice.
That actually leads me only because it was kind of mentioned here. Elizabeth Acosta asked, what is the average timeline for making sets in comparison to like the shooting schedule? I'm just going to ask that part because we've already kind of addressed the other parts of their question. But yeah, like what's your out time or lead time before you get to the shooting schedule?
Yeah, well, it depends if it's a mini season or a full season for sure. It feels like we never have enough time, and somehow we're always rushed. But we start months in advance discussing things and working with Brennan to kind of take whatever idea that he has of the world and the stuff and start building off of it. And then we try. I always try to get them to do character creation as early as possible because it's such a major. I just know it's such a major feedback into the world and into the sets that we're going to want to make and stuff. It just feeds everything. So that happens, and then we kind of start to solidify what the sets are. And so that's like a week or two process usually, and then or more, and then. There's a lot of sourcing stuff, which is just kind of like brute force, like what's available kit wise and miniature wise, and budgeting and planning and scheduling, and then we start ordering stuff, which a lot of times it takes a couple of weeks because many miniature things come from Europe, and then so that all happens before we even start to build anything. So that's like a month and a half of stuff, and then it's kind of about a week per set is sort of our time in the shop. Just based on the size of the shop we have and how many people we have had working at one time to get stuff done.
Nice. Yeah. Speaking of making sets, the live seasons, it's notable for not having that being theater of the mind. If you did keep track of it, was there any of those fights that you were like, that's one I would have liked to put something together for?
Oh, totally. I hope I get the chance to visit some of those places and characters and stuff. I would love to do like a hang van thing, and what's the pirate Leviathan, right?
Oh yes.
I would love to build a Leviathan or some part of that. So much of that stuff. All of it is the same quality of like ideas and stuff. So I would really be stoked to build any of that stuff.
I got to call out John Schaefer, who mostly just wanted to compliment you. John Schaefer says, let him know that his work is brilliant and amazing. It's knocking it out of the park. And then also, what would he do for Pirate City Leviathan? It's definitely the moment Kelsey asked that. I'm like, better bring up Leviathan. That Rook in the Row battle alone would have been insane to do in miniature form. So the two-player battle there.
Well, thank you, John Schaefer, for the kind words. I don't know. I mean, I guess I would love to kick around some ideas about Leviathan. There's so many things we could do, like the whole like multi-leveled aspect of it. I mean, it's free floating, right?
Yep.
So it's like a flotilla. Yeah. I mean, I could see like naval battles, like, change the scale. Like, I mean, there's all kinds of fun stuff you could do there.
Options are truly endless. Let's see. So the next question I had was, what season was the most intense on like finishing touches, weathering, and painting? I'm asking this one specifically because I'm in the middle. I'm just about done rewatching through on Sleeping City, and there's so much weathering and texture work that really like makes everything look so perfectly like you're just in a tiny version of that world.
Well, thank you. So what are you asking? What
season was the most intense on like the painting, finishing, weathering, texturing stuff? So I was curious if it was that or something else.
I don't know. I mean, it really varies kind of like set to set. I'm thinking about how in some of the things in Unsleeping City were maybe more easy because they were kind of conventional world stuff. But then I'm also thinking of like the battle with the bodega and the little strips of stores like that. Anytime you have a set where you've got all these sub rooms, it's so nuts just to build because you have to think about how the camera can get in there and which walls have to be removable and stuff. But in that one, we were using this stuff called spider serum from Green Stuff World, which is like a new product they have, and that was really neat to figure out and to make all those cobwebs and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Was there one that stood out to you that it seemed like it had a lot of weathering on it?
I think I was just particularly looking at like the Rat King fight, especially with like the brick wall behind the rat and stuff. The subway with Epona.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes weathering is the easier thing because like in scenic painting, a lot of it's kind of messy and easy. It's like you're kind of like squirting it with something and then sort of wiping it off, or putting paint on like a piece of wood and rubbing it on something. It's like kind of a more faster actually than the like really detailed stuff. So yeah.
Since I mentioned the subway and you mentioned the detailing, just like roughly how long was painting that train to Nod? Because it was gorgeous with like the colors, gradation and stuff.
I can't remember if I did the base coat on that with the airbrush or not, but I think Shane did the most of the painting of that, and I want to say it took like a day and a half or something. Not too bad.
Nice. It turned out awesome.
Thank you.
I have a question, since we're kind of getting more into the specific locations. Jackson Tory Bart asks, this is specifically about Tiny Heist, which is kind of a unique challenge. Everything else is scaled down, right? Miniature people, full-size buildings, but Tiny Heist, what were the unique excitements and complications in building sets for Tiny Heist, which instead of being in miniature scale was close to actual size for the 1 to 2 inch tall characters, and then the use of real objects in those sets was absolutely brilliant, according to Jackson, and really anyone that was watching it. It was always so good. It's one of the best things about Tiny Heist.
Thank you. That one was really kind of a difficult to wrap our heads around, because we had to just keep reminding ourselves, like mentally, I think all of us in the shop, like, oh yeah, this is like to true scale. Like it just is I don't know, it's like working with your other hand or something. It just was like a totally different mindset. And so that was definitely challenging. And then you're like, okay, we're going to build it out of the real world stuff, but like, what is all the stuff, you know? And you can think of things like bobbins and thimbles and whatever. Those are only a couple things, and not everything can be bobbins and thimbles. So then you're like, okay, well, what would they use? You know, what's small and trash like that could be discarded from a human, but that could also be picked up and utilized. And so many times things are like, oh yeah, you know, they would use a thimble as a cup, and said, no, a thimble is way too big. That's like a bathtub, you know, like you know, there's a lot of stuff that you kind of have an idea about its size, but when you get down and you're really locked into real world constraints, and it's not like a cartoon that you can just sort of cheat a little bit, you have to sometimes really push to find things that that would work for that. And then the other thing is just you know, we knew it would be a lot of like organic stuff for some of it, you know, and like real world materials that we wanted to incorporate, but they don't always, you can't always just like go get some grass, you know, and put it in your thing, because by the time you shoot it, it's going to be yellow, you know, and dead. So you have to find good fake grass or whatever. It's just things like that, trying to work out solutions to unique problems. But it was fun. It was a blast to figure out. We had a good time on that one.
Yeah, on to the tiny heist topic. Shuby's Casino is the thing that always like comes to mind first when I think of tiny heist. So in talking about the kinds of things that you did use to build the sets, when it came to like the parody things like the Quattro Crazy and like the Tamagotchi slot machines, was it like, did you guys know before you built it that's what you guys wanted to put there, or is that like we knew we wanted structures here and we came up with the ideas and skinning later?
Well, part of the skinning is like the classic production thing. Like most people will avoid like corporate logos and stuff like that because of licensing and other things. And so, you know, that's like a default. And it's like, okay, we want them to have like a big, like disgusting Four Loko can it's like that they've been, but we can't use Four Loko, but it's the shorthand. So we're saying like, yeah, it's going to be Four Loko can, but we know that obviously it's going to be something different. And then, you know, at that time, College Humor had a graphic design department that's great, and they do that kind of stuff all the time. So, so we leaned on them for a lot. I was like, okay, this has to be, and you know, I think it's fun to like give other people room to figure stuff out. You know, it's like, okay, this is like a fake Four Loko can, go. And like they were, you know, they did such an amazing job, and you know, that's where some of that comes from. And then other things that you see in there, like I think a lot of the like book covers and magazines and fake chip bags, some of that stuff was also from this company called probably the less funny stuff, the more kind of just generic stuff is from this company called the Earl Hayes Press in the Valley. And that's like all they do is like they make fake book covers, fake magazines, they make fake pasta boxes, they make fake money, they make pizza boxes, like anything that's a printed type of material that you would see in someone's house for movies. They make all this stuff, so you can just go and buy it, and so that's easy too.
Neat.
What do you use for the fake? Like, I know this is super nitty gritty, but what do you use for like the yogurt is kind of glossy and it's sort of watery and or it feels like that the Cola
like
River.
The Cola River is that.
Yeah. Like what do you use to give that very kind of like viscous liquid?
Eye gloss kind of. Yeah, well, both of those we used like a 2-part clear acrylic resin. So there are 2 different strategies. So the Cola River, for that, we basically carve out like an actual river, you know, like a riverbed, like with the shape you want, right? And you underpaint it. So you paint it kind of the color of the cola, and you have little rocks and stuff. And then we mixed together this 2-part acrylic, and we bought this powder that's designed to go into acrylics. It's like a tinting powder that has sparkle in it. This particular one, we're like, oh, this is like the fizz, we'll just get this one, you know. And so you mix that all in, and this all is carefully measured and weighed and stuff. And I think actually Sabrina Wishner did all that stuff that season, and she's a wizard at that and did a really good job. So that's how we did the Coal River. For the yogurt shoals, the thing with our resin is it just sits, which is great if you want like a flat ocean, but we wanted to be able to show the waves, and we also wanted to show the ripples around the boat, and also kind of have that, yogurt cottage cheese kind of lump thing happening. So so me and her drew out on a piece of blue foam the kind of shape of the ripples, and then essentially she sculpted them and added kind of a chunkiness. She sculpted it with like a rough tool so that it had this kind of chunky way, and then set up I think she painted on the same stuff, like a 2-part acrylic resin with some white powder in now, so it's tinted white, right? So she kind of brushed that on the whole thing, and then it just sort of settles and looks kind of smooth, but it also is naturally highly glossy, so it was like the perfect material to use for that.
Awesome. Yeah, I've done very, very minimal resin casting myself. So when I was looking at that, I was like, this looks like it's probably resin, but especially for the yogurt one, I'm like, I don't know how to do that.
It's tricky because it's like you would think, oh, it's just a pour because it's flat, but it's like, no, we won't be able to get the waves if we do that, so that was the kind of problem solving for that one.
Neat. Let's see. So similar to how in the fight from Bloodkeep, where you had the lower deck of the ship off to the side, I really loved in episode 10 where you guys had just inside Dulcington, just like the clear stand you guys did for like the zoom in fight.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other ideas you guys pitched for how to do that, or was that just something you guys like, okay, we've done something similar, we know how to solve this?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about that, that battle, we knew we wanted to do that scale, and we knew that it was like, oh, well, there's definitely going to be these little encounters, and then thinking about shooting those in post, or even just, the basics of D&D, like it might start to break down because it's set up for this like 1-inch grid system. And if it's so micro, then, it may start to break down. So we were like, oh, well, maybe we can do some kind of zoom in thing, we create these little mini maps. And I think at first we were going to do like little bits of terrain, and just trying to make like a couple of different samples. So it could be like, oh, this one takes place on the pink grass, or this is whatever. And then we just ended up with the clear idea. I don't remember where it came from, but it seemed like it worked out okay.
Yeah, it's beautifully simple and like still really nicely like let
Awesome.
you see everything that happened. It still felt real. It was because it felt so good at that scale to be able to see everything Lou's character did. Amethar's turns were great, just destroying.
Just going to work. I have one here. Speaking of that, because it is something where you have multiple potential solutions for a problem. Matthew Bowen asks, is it ever like, well, you and Brennan are kind of discussing what these things are going to be, or what monsters, especially things that Brennan's going to bring into the campaign, and their contextualization is it ever difficult to communicate what Brennan kind of wants from kind of more customized monsters in a physical model? And he references, it's like the cornus with multiple buttholes seems either very straightforward or very abstract. And so, yeah, do you ever kind of like do multiple passes, or is there ever kind of a struggle there?
Yeah, I think it's sort of across the board. Like the cream corn ooze, I'm pretty sure that from before we had even like built the set or had any, the very beginning is like almost one of the pitch things is like Brennan's like, there's a cream corn ooze that they fight in the cafeteria, and it's like, yes, I can see that. That's. But then we had to figure out, and also that was kind of the beginning of our creative relationship on this stuff, and so we were kind of figuring it out too, I think. And I think Yeah, I mean, just a lot of back and forth because it's like, okay, well, is it just a blob? Does it have a face? Okay, does it have a mouth? Yes, but does it have eyes? No. Um, and it's generating. It's a monster generator. It's generating these um, little corn gremlins. Well, how is it generating them? You know, it's like are they just popping out of it, or what? And I can't even remember at this point the where the buttholes came from. Or who first
Whoever remembers
came up
where
with
the
that.
buttholes came from.
I do remember feeling very proud of them as Shane was sculpting them in the shop and sending a close-up picture of one to Brennan and feeling, is this work for you? And yeah. So, but in general, you know, it's a lot of back and forth, and sometimes Brennan has very specific, you know, from the get-go, and sometimes it's like through asking him questions, because I'm having to actually make the thing. It helps him actually, I think, flesh stuff out that you know that he probably knows intuitively, but he hasn't like put down like definitively yet. You know, like in Crown of Candy, it's like as we're doing this, I'm like, he's like, oh yeah, this guy's like whatever, a bread man, and then this person's just a person that's like bread themed kind of or whatever. And so it's like, okay, so in this world, you know, I just fall in and just all the logic, probably the questions that they ask in a Discord, you know, or make jokes about it. It's like, in this world, you can be actual bread, or you could be like a person who's like bread themed, and they're both like made out of bread, and they both eat bread, and they eat other stuff too. And that's not cannibalism. I mean, like just sort of like, you know, asking all these questions so that I can make the stuff, you know.
I thought that there was so much more meaning at the beginning of Crown of Candy to like, it's like if they're more humanoid or less humanoid, and then it became very apparent very early on. It's like, nope, that's just fun miniature design. Sometimes they're people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're crying cheese. Can we talk about the crying cheese? So it's clearly the most important miniature in Crown of Candy. It appears in the tournament. No, I'm just joking.
It's actually a crying pineapple.
It's a crying pineapple?
Oh,
see,
there's a little pineapple chunk that I think Shane just painted it on there. I was like, that's beautiful. We're putting that in.
I don't know why it stuck with me so much, but in the camera pans, I'm like, what is that? And can it be at every public event that happens with this group? Just fantastic. I'll let Kelsey take the next question.
Yeah, so I actually had one more question around the minis fight. How did you guys handle, like, what was the approach for simplification to scale them down and still keep them recognizable? Because they were still so cute and like distinct at that size.
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a challenge because, you know, all the PCs are typically from Hero Forge, at least the base of them, and then we usually kind of kit bash them as needed. And so we had the 3D files of those, right? So we work with a great printer in LA and who can, you know, do great stuff for us. So I was like, can we print these at this 6mm scale? And he was like, I don't think so. We can try. And then so we were like, well, let's just scale them up a little bit, like to like 8 or 9mm scale, because they're heroes, and let's try and print them. And so he printed them, and then we got them, and they're like these little, like, you know, smaller than a pea, you know, it's like almost a rice grain size, and like mostly none of their limbs came out. You know, they're like these little like squidgy, you know, kind of melty versions of the PCs and other full size ones. And so I was like, man, this is a bummer. This is a total loss. You know, we had some other like 6mm minis, you know, soldiers and stuff. And then Shane, we were just thinking that we were gonna just kit bash them from these other bits. And Shane was like, oh, you know, actually I can still use this like 3D printed one and like glue this little teeny arm with a sword from one of these other like a little metal arm with a sword onto it. So he did all this like incredibly detailed work, and man, I think it worked. I was blown away by it, and yeah, so that was an interesting journey. Awesome.
Speaking of miniatures, and just off of Kelsey's, this is real quick. Raven Craig asks, how much does it hurt when one of the casts like yeets a mini right after it first jumps in and it breaks? And how much does it hurt when they damage your beautiful babies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it hurts. Not in a like. I mean, it doesn't hurt me. I just feel bad because, like, when you spend all this time making all this stuff that or that other people make that is all supposed to work. I think this is like the production mindset. It's like everything's supposed to work and nothing breaks and there's no problems, and you've already thought about all the things that could happen ahead of time, and which is impossible, but that's our task. And then when something breaks, it's like, oh, it sucks because I hate for it to break. You know what I mean? And, like, we can fix anything. It's okay. They're never quite as good once they've been broken. You can see a little boo-boo, but it's not too bad.
It's just like a D4 of psychic damage.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely am making faces at the side, like, when I see something like that happen.
We're gonna, Kelsey, I want you to ask the next major question, but I just want to clarify. So you're on set? Are you on set for like the majority of the filming, or pretty much every episode, or
not the live season? But
yeah.
The other seasons, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Usually we have like a little. We have a shop that we work in off location, and then at the wherever they're shooting, we usually have a little tiny room that is sort of like the room of Chamber of Secrets, is what we call it, where we have like all the spell cards and minis and the sets and anything that they might need, but we keep it under guarded so they don't get spoiled or anything, and then we can jump in there and paint something if we need to. So we have like a little tiny workstation and stuff.
Nice. Yeah, so what's my next question? Oh yeah, so on the adventuring party you were on, you had mentioned that there was the one edible item that was embedded in the DM screen. I just wanted, like, the pedantic thing of me is, was there anything else that was edible and then rendered unedible, or is it just that piece of pasta?
No, I mean, it was several pieces of pasta, but they were the same variety. But no, everything else is like foam and hydrocal and epoxy, and definitely stuff you would not want to eat.
Well, then, mild applause. There's a lot of very realistic looking food. It hella looks like you just like put something over it, like lacquered that food, and then you just had a bunch of food you bought and just lacquered it.
Oh yeah, the Swedish fish especially. That's like part of the main reason for that question is because I was staring at some of the Swedish fish on a couple episodes, just like, I don't know why, but I'm fixated. They look so good.
Yeah. I mean, it's all, that stuff is all this, that kind of stuff is all this like cabochon stuff, which is, they're like one-sided, little decorative things that you could like glue on your cell phone, or people use them in, like slime beads. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Where you can make the slime and you put the things and then you like squeeze them, the little hamburgers or little hot dogs or whatever. But anyway, some of them are like stunning. Like I had my 4-year-old daughter in the shop visiting, when we were building this stuff, and I was really watching her because there's like fake sprinkles, fake gumdrops, like so much stuff would be really bad for her to like put in her mouth, but that totally look edible. So
around that, since you mentioned the cabochons you guys used, and I remember you mentioning using those to like make the bread construct monsters. I love those to death. The 2-headed one, like, oh my goodness, my heart. Were the 4 ones that we saw like the only ones that were made? And were there any other like designs for those that were pitched, since they were all different creatures?
I don't think we made any other ones of those. Usually most of the time we kind of, we don't make more stuff than we shoot, just because we're just very kind of trying to stay efficient and put everything we can into stuff that we actually see on the screen. I don't think there was any more of those. I remember just trying to understand like what those were, because like kind of everything in the world is a bread golem, or you know what I mean? Like it's already like a walking bread. So how do you make a walking bread? Like actually further, it's like, oh, you cut up different breads and you put them together. And so that was kind of an interesting challenge to like make it look like that. But I can't remember if there was any other. I don't think there were any other designs for those.
Thank you for not only bringing back the corn gremlin concept into play, but even doing it in the way, because you could. I was just hoping there'd be like an Easter egg corn cutie like hanging out in the background somewhere, and instead you're like, nope, it's featured and it's bigger. Like we made it for this.
Yeah, we turned the dial, scaled it up some, gave it some battle scars.
Oh, it was so
and
good.
Put it back in, yeah.
Same universe, all of it's in the same universe. That's clear now.
That's maybe this whole world is inside of the green corn ooze.
That would be horrifying. What a hot take. You heard it here first. That's what I'm gonna title, like all Dimension 20, the like clickbait thing. It's like Dimension 20 universe is actually all in one place. And like Tiny Heist is just a toy set from someone in Fantasy High. Like it's all
I can see it coming together.
It's and then Bloodkeep just totally makes sense with all of it. Like, yeah, no, it's a video game. So I only have a lot of questions that I kind of want to ask sort of rapid fire, because I want to get as many of these questions there. So I'm gonna leave it to Kelsey to ask like another couple like actual like more significant questions if we have them.
Yeah, I only had one or two. So kind of on like the bread construct question, I was curious with the last season or last episode being Sugar Plum Fairy, what it went into making that mini, just because between like the different faces and wings and stuff, it was an awesome design that couldn't have been like the easiest thing to translate.
Yeah, that was a tough mini to figure out. It was, Brennan knew right away that it was going to be this like biblical, seraphim type angel, that had the like many different wings and the different faces and stuff, which is there's not really a lot of minis out there for that. And also we knew we wanted to have it at a bigger scale so that it was imposing, and then practically thinking about like all those wings and arms and things, it's like, it's a lot to like attach. It's also like this really fiddly, delicate thing that you don't want to bump into something, it's like this, it's tricky. And, but anyway, we just, I think we sourced some like 54 millimeter, which is like twice the, a bigger scale than 28 millimeter, some like angels, and like maybe a Greek person or something with like a toga, and cobbled a couple of those together for the faces and stuff too, and then just wings from everywhere. And and then we were gluing wings on feet, and there's like a wing hand, and I don't know,
wings.
Yeah, wings on wings, lots of wings.
I have one more question around just like assembling things. Since I'm still going through on Sleeping City, the Santa melee, was that just like beheading a bunch of little Santas to make the mutant Santas?
Oh, you're talking about the first battle?
Yeah, with all of those
the mutant Santas.
Terrible, amazing Santas.
Those were mutants. They're from this guy named Bristol, or that's his, I believe his moniker online. But I spent a lot of time trying to find mutants that didn't have guns, because most of the time when you have a mutant mini, it's like a punk apocalypse type of vibe, like a Mad Max or something. And so those are some of the only minis I could find that were just like people ish, that were mutants, and they were beautiful. And so we got those, and then we just made little Santa hats and like sculpted little hand Santa hats and stuff onto them. Gave them little candy cane, a couple of them, I think. And that kind of
Oh, they were great. To that point, because this is kind of related to that, when you're putting together things, are there any like substances or things that you've realized you can't have in a set? This is a question from Vivian Liu. What's like a banned feature in a battle set, or like water that you're not allowed to build? And maybe really want to give a try at, or maybe a banned like chemical or substance that you just don't?
Well, definitely like sands, like that's something that's been brought up different times. Water is another one, I mean, of course, this last battle we had a water-based thing, but it was a minimal amount of water, and it was contained, and it wasn't getting like splashed around. Because the main thing is just that, like, you're the cast in Brennan are like, they're doing a thing, they're having fun making a show, they're not like thinking about the stuff in that way, and accidents happen, and it would just kind of, some things like that might kind of like start to destroy the stuff, the set. So water is probably not something we will do using actual water. And then the concept of sand is really cool, or something like that, but man, it would just be so insane.
Just how do we get it in here? How do we get it out?
Yeah, we can do fake sand,
Fake sand is fine.
That like Elmer's glue sand, like kinetic sand mix.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe kinetic.
No.
Still gonna be too messy.
First question we're just going to go through this list. What was your favorite, or one of your favorite sets in all of Dimension 20? Maybe not a set that's like as obvious as some of the other sets that people gravitate to, or do you have like a secret favorite or a particular one that's special to you?
This set that just came up, I really appreciated the ice cream, or really had a kind of special thing with the ice cream temple one.
That is a great set, and it immediately, almost as if it was scripted, leads into my next question. How did you do the frosting? This is from Maya Castilla. How did you do the frosted aspect of the platform from the ice cream temple fight?
There's a few different products that are like ice type of. It's basically like white paint with like grit in it, So I use those, and I just use actual white paint and like a brush, like the way that you're not supposed to use it, like on the side, and just sort of like glooped it on.
Excellent. You already answered if you watch the episodes as they come out. You apparently. Oh yeah, I guess I should ask. Do you rewatch? Because you're on set for like so Crown of Candy, right? You were there for the actual recording. Do you watch them? Like, do you tend to watch the live ones, or relatively soon after they release them?
I don't always, because for me it's like weird in a way that it's already existed in this several different ways, where it's like me and Brennan talking about it and conceptualizing it, and then building the things, and then it sort of like transforms, and it's like real. And we have our ideas about it when we're building it, and then it's like the actual taping where I watch it come alive. And so then watching the video of it, the final edited version, polished, it's like yet another version. And it I don't know, it's kind of weird, like I really appreciate it. I appreciate what they do, especially in post, and the shots, I love, but I don't always watch every episode. I watch most of them.
I mean, it makes sense. That's what happens with creators, where people are like I've spent so much time working on this, like I know it and I feel it. I don't need it. Like it's strange after you've completed a task to go back and look at it and be like, there it is, the thing I made again. Tim Cox asks if the players get to keep their minis after each season, and if not, what happens to them?
No, not usually, because we shoot close-ups of them and stuff, and then we also just keep them. We've historically just kept them in case we wanted to use them for something else, and they are all stored in a climate-controlled storage unit of holding somewhere in the valley safely.
And not to be named, to be broken in by this ravenous fan base.
So on that question real quick, and it might not be something you can speak to, this was actually pretty much my wrap-up question. I was wondering, like, has it ever been on the table to like auction off these pieces either for charity or something like that?
I've heard different ideas kicked around. We went to C2E2 in 2019, I think, with like 4 sets in like these lighted plexiglass cases, which is really cool. When we had minis out and kind of staged a little moment from the battle, and I loved that because it was like you get to talk to people about the thing, and we can all look at it. It's right there. But I don't know what their plans are. I think probably all of that stuff is a possibility.
I guess I'm going to combine kind of a last thing that a lot of different questions kind of went toward, and I think that this will be sort of the last question from the audience questions. So this is combining sort of Christiana Formeller and Aaron Dana and Michelle Labbit, and another person who's asking for advice that I don't have in front of me right now because I didn't capture their name for some reason. Do you have any recommendations for people that obviously don't have a production budget, right? Like they're working within their own budgets. And so, they're looking to spend a bit of money, but like when they're kind of custom building or putting together their sets, do you have any like recommendations? And within that, are there any super common stuff or super common materials that you tend to use maybe yourself on your own games? Do you have any materials that are surprisingly versatile that you kind of put to use either on Dimension 20 or in your own games? So sort of all leading toward economically doing this, and recommendations if you have them.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can make stuff out of cardboard. It doesn't. It's all just on some level. We're not actually painting every fingernail on them. On some level, we're just abbreviating details. So it's really just about communicating an idea. So that's one thing I would say to anybody who's building stuff is like think about kind of the holistic thing of, because sometimes you can really get into what you're making, but try and put yourself at the table and see it from how the players are seeing it, because that is really all that matters ultimately, and communicate what you need to communicate with them. Another thing I think is good to keep in mind for first time builders, or if you're just still learning and stuff, is um, thinking about how and where minis can stand, because like if you have this, sometimes people will build something that's really cool and like um lumpy or whatever, and it's like, oh, but minis are not going to really sit on that. You need to kind of at least think about that. It's an abstraction, and you're using it in a way, and you want to get use out of it. You know what I mean? You don't want it just to be a cool thing that sits on your shelf. So those things, and then I guess also trying not to be too specific of the stuff you're building, because like building like a handful of rocks, and trees on little hills can go a long way. You could use those forever, and rearrange them, put them in a line, whatever, you can do different things with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't do what Dimension 20 does unless you happen to have a production crew and a budget behind that with the intent to do it.
They only get used once, so
it's nuts. All right, Kelsey, do you have anything else?
No, that was all my questions.
Spoiler question for that I think everyone on the groups wants to know. Well, why did you make the Vulture in the half pipe episode of the first season of Fantasy Heists so intriguing, Rick?
Yeah, that was a learning process, moment for me, teaching moment. What's funny is I also tried to put into that set a dead cow.
They would have been into that.
We had a dead cow, and I mean, I guess basically it's like that's early on when we were making these things, and sometimes you have things in the shop. It's like, wow, look at that cool vulture. We should put it somewhere. Let's put it right there. Or like, look at this dead cow. Wouldn't it be funny if there was a dead cow? But again, it goes back to like, communicating, because you have to realize that like anything that you put on that board is now like a clue, and it's actually saying something to the players. You know what I mean? So everything that's on there, you have to actually think about. And you can do things like the crying cheese guy or whatever, pineapple person,
Yep.
but you got to do it where it's like low key enough that it is not going to like ruin the break things.
Not gonna pull focus.
Like in the super scaled miniature thing, the what was it, like the bale of hay, or like the haystack, or whatever it was,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all of them just assumed. You got to remember when you're building your minis or your fields, that if you put it in front of the players, they might want to look into what it is. And that same instinct, I love that instinct of, it's like, oh, this is cool, I should put this in this. And it's like, well, if you thought it was cool, your players will probably also think, oh, what a cool thing, that's gotta
Yeah,
be
I guess that's the
something.
thing, is like whatever you put in, you should just be prepared to like roll with it, because they might like slow down and be like, I want to talk to that vulture, man. Let's roll, let's do a spell to talk to it.
Yeah, that's all I've got. I mean, of course, I want to
Cool.
ask you to spoil information that I know you can't talk about future seasons of Dimension 20. But other than that, is there anything else from you, Kelsey?
No, just thank you again for taking the time to talk to us. I appreciate it so much. This has been so awesome to get to talk to you and learn so many little things.
Oh, thank you all so much. This has been a treat. It's really fun, and I love the show. Thanks for having me on.
Is there anything, we're going to do this kind of classic podcast slash interview style? Is there anything you'd like to like direct people toward, or plug,
Um,
or anything?
you can find me on Twitter at Richard H. Perry,
Mhm.
but otherwise, that's it.
Yep, indeed. Okay, well, thanks everyone for listening to this. We could honestly talk to you, Rick, like we could do an hour-long interview with you on every battle set you do. Like, how'd you
Oh,
do this?
thanks.
What was this? So thank you very much for your
Yeah,
time.
well, let's do it again sometime.
We would be more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rick. You have a good night,
Thank
everyone
you
that's
all.
watching this.